Why Jesus Christ was invented. Part 1. The motive. This is the most profound and informative video you will ever come across on the subject of whether Jesus was a real or mythical person. In this video, we will examine the relationship between the Roman Empire and the Jewish people which spanned around 8 centuries. In particular, we'll look at the diverging nature of customs and beliefs between the Roman Empire and their Jewish subjects. We'll also look at Jewish propensity to contribute to the Roman Empire, be it in the form of labor, goods, or taxes. Let's first remind ourselves of Jewish history before the arrival of the Roman Empire. Jewish society was quite small, compared to some of their masters, the Babylonians, the Assyrians, the Persians, and the Egyptians. The Jews had been a subjugated people on many occasions. After Alexander the Great died, his vast empire, stretching from Greece to India, fractured almost immediately. The Seleucid Empire began in 312 BCE, founded by Seleucus I Nicator, one of Alexander the Great's generals. Seleucus gained control of Babylonia, and over time, much of the Near East, from Anatolia and Syria to Mesopotamia and Persia. In 198 BCE, the Seleucids defeated the Ptolemies of Egypt, gaining control of Judea. Initially, the Seleucids allowed Jewish religious autonomy, but this changed under Antiochus IV Epiphanes, who tried to impose Hellenistic culture. His policies, including banning Jewish practices and desecrating the temple, triggered the Maccabean revolt, 167 to 160 BCE, which eventually led to an independent Jewish state under the Hasmoneans. This revolt started after Queen Salome Alexandra died. Her sons Hyrcanus and Aristobulus fought over the throne. Roman general Pompey was approached by both brothers, but Aristobulus tried to resist Pompey's arbitration by retreating to his fortress. In 63 BCE, Pompey marched into Judea, arrested Aristobulus, and besieged Jerusalem when his supporters refused entry. After a 3-month siege, Roman forces breached the temple precincts. It is said that 12,000 Jews were killed, and Pompey famously entered the Holy of Holies, desecrating the sacred space, though he left its treasures untouched. This marks the first major instance of friction between Jews and Romans, based on the insistence of senior Roman military figures to impose a set of foreign, alien customs on their Jewish subjects. From this point onwards, Judea became a client kingdom of Rome, losing its independence. In 6 CE, Judas of Galilee led a significant anti-Roman uprising in Judea, sparked by the census of Quirinius, which was imposed after Rome formally annexed the region. The Roman census aimed to assess property for taxation, which many Jews saw as a violation of divine sovereignty. Judas, along with Zadok the Pharisee, rallied resistance, declaring that God alone should rule Israel, not mortal emperors. This movement birthed the so-called Fourth Philosophy, as later described by Josephus, and associated with the Zealots, who rejected Roman rule and taxation. The revolt was suppressed, but its legacy endured. The uprising marked the beginning of organized Jewish resistance to Roman authority. It laid ideological groundwork for later revolts, including the First Jewish-Roman War, also known as the Jewish Revolt. For the sake of chronological continuity, let's also include a summary of Jesus' alleged life and works as it's understood by Christians. Allegedly, Jesus was born around 6 to 4 BCE in Bethlehem. As a young child, his family fled to Egypt to escape Herod's purge of newborns, returning later to settle in Nazareth. At age 12, Jesus made a striking impression at the temple in Jerusalem, engaging religious teachers with unusual wisdom for a child. But his life remained obscure until his public ministry began around 28 CE, when he was baptized in the Jordan River. Emerging from this ritual, he began preaching a message of love, repentance, and generally pacifism, initially aimed at the Jews. Over the next 2 to 3 years, Jesus traveled through Galilee and Judea, performing healings, teaching in parables, and challenging societal norms. His charisma drew crowds, so it is said, while his radical views stirred opposition from religious elites. And in the central event of the Christian faith, in the spring of 30 CE, Jesus entered Jerusalem for Passover, greeted by hopeful followers. Days later, tensions peaked. Arrested, tried, and condemned by both Jewish authorities, and unwillingly by Roman governor Pontius Pilate, he was crucified outside the city walls, a brutal method reserved for rebels. According to Christian tradition, Jesus' story did not end there. On the 3rd day, his followers claimed he rose from the dead, appearing to many over several weeks. Then, from the Mount of Olives, he ascended to heaven, leaving behind a movement that would reshape history. Returning to our historical chronology, in 38 CE, Alexandria witnessed one of the earliest recorded pogroms against Jews, a brutal episode of violence, persecution, and displacement under Roman rule. The Roman Emperor Caligula sent Herod Agrippa, a Jewish king, to Alexandria, provoking hostility from the Greek population, who mocked his arrival. The Roman prefect Aulus Avilius Flaccus, seeking favor with Caligula and appeasement of local Greeks, ordered statues of the emperor placed in Jewish synagogues, a direct affront to Jewish religious beliefs. Flaccus declared Jews foreigners and aliens, effectively stripping them of legal protections. Mobs drove Jews out of 4 city quarters, cramming them into a small ghetto-like district. Jewish homes were looted, and families were subjected to torture, beatings, stoning, crucifixion, and even burnings alive. The philosopher Philo of Alexandria, an eyewitness, described the atrocities in vivid detail, noting that entire families were burned and infants were not spared. Flaccus was eventually removed from office. The pogrom is often considered the first historically documented anti-Jewish riot, and laid the groundwork for future tensions between Jews and Greeks in Alexandria. Our next story kicks off in 46 CE. 2 brothers, Simon and Jacob, sons of Judas the Galilean, led a zealot-inspired revolt against Roman rule in Galilee. This uprising was rooted in fierce opposition to Roman taxation and imperial authority, echoing their father's earlier resistance during the census of Quirinius in 6 CE. The revolt began as a sporadic insurgency driven by the fourth philosophy, which held that God alone should rule Israel, rejecting Roman governance entirely. Simon and Jacob emerged as militant leaders, continuing their father's legacy of resistance. The revolt peaked in 48 CE and was swiftly crushed by Tiberius Julius Alexander, the Roman procurator of Judea. Both brothers were captured and executed. Though short-lived, the revolt helped solidify the Zealot movement, which would later play a major role in the Jewish revolt. It reflected growing tensions between Jewish nationalist factions and Roman imperial control, a recurring theme in Judean history. Now we come to the most significant war as it relates to the Christ myth theory, and as we will show later, the war that acted as a catalyst for manifesting the Jesus Christ character as the Jewish king and Messiah. The Jewish Revolt of 66 CE, also known as the First Jewish-Roman War, was a major uprising against Roman rule in the province of Judea. It lasted until 73 CE and had devastating consequences for the Jewish people and their homeland. Jewish resentment had built up over decades due to Roman taxation, religious disrespect, and corrupt governors. In 66 CE, Roman procurator Gessius Florus looted the temple treasury and massacred protesting Jews, igniting widespread rebellion. Radical Jewish factions, especially the Zealots and Sicarii, took control and expelled Roman forces from Jerusalem. In the Battle of Beth Horon, Jewish rebels had ambushed and defeated an entire Roman legion, shocking the empire. Emperor Nero sent Vespasian and his son Titus to crush the revolt. They retook Galilee and laid siege to Jerusalem in 70 CE. In this siege, after months of starvation and infighting among Jewish factions, Roman forces breached the city walls and destroyed the Second Temple. The last rebel stronghold, Mar Zeda, fell in around 73 CE after a dramatic siege. The defenders reportedly committed mass suicide rather than surrender. Over 1 million Jews were killed according to Josephus. Thousands were enslaved. The destruction of the temple ended the Second Temple period and led to the rise of Rabbinic Judaism, which reshaped Jewish identity and religious practice for centuries. The Flavian dynasty celebrated victory with monuments like the Arch of Titus, depicting temple spoils. The Kitos War, 115 to 117 CE, was a violent and widespread Jewish uprising across the Roman Empire's eastern provinces, erupting during Emperor Trajan's campaign against Parthia. Long-standing hostility between Jewish communities and their Greek and Roman neighbors, especially in cities like Alexandria and Cyrene, often flared into violence. The destruction of the Second Temple had deepened Jewish resentment toward Roman rule, and the imposition of the Fiscus Judaicus, Jewish tax, and other financial burdens fueled anger. Many Jews saw Roman governance as exploitative and sacrilegious. With Roman legions stretched thin in the east, Jewish rebels saw an opportunity to strike. In Libya, Jewish rebels destroyed Roman temples and buildings. Rebels joined forces with local Jews in Alexandria. In Cyprus, Jews reportedly massacred Greeks and Romans in Salamis. There was also warfare in Mesopotamia and Judea. Emperor Trajan dispatched generals Marcius Turbo and Lucius Quietus to crush the revolts. Roman retaliation was extremely brutal, with mass executions and near-total destruction of Jewish communities in affected regions. Jews were banned from Cyprus. Even shipwrecked Jewish survivors faced death if they landed there. The war restated deep ethnic tensions and the fragility of Roman control in the east. The name Kitos comes from a corruption of Quietus, the Roman general who led the suppression. It's a lesser-known but pivotal chapter in Jewish Roman history. It set the stage for the Bar Kokhba revolt. The Bar Kokhba revolt, which lasted from 132 to 136 CE, was the last one for a couple of centuries, and the most devastating of the Jewish-Roman wars. A fierce rebellion against Roman rule in Judea was led by the charismatic figure Simon Bar Kokhba. Emperor Hadrian planned to build a Roman colony over the ruins of Jerusalem and erect a temple to Jupiter on the Temple Mount. He also imposed religious restrictions, including a possible ban on circumcision, inflaming Jewish religious and nationalistic tensions. Bar Kokhba was hailed by many as the Messiah and declared Prince of Israel. Rebels initially succeeded in driving out Roman forces and establishing an independent Jewish state, minting coins and issuing decrees. Rome responded with overwhelming force. 6 full legions, auxiliary units, and elite generals like Sextus Julius Severus were deployed. The final stronghold, Bitar, fell in 135 CE, and Bar Kokhba eliminated. An estimated 580,000 Jews were killed, with many others enslaved or exiled. Jews were banned from Jerusalem in 135 CE by Emperor Hadrian, following the brutal suppression of the revolt. After crushing them, Hadrian sought to erase Jewish identity from the region. He renamed Jerusalem as Aelia Capitolina, a Roman colony built over the ruins of the city. He also renamed Judea as Syria Palestina, aiming to sever its Jewish associations. Jews were forbidden from entering or even looking upon Jerusalem, except possibly on one day a year to mourn the temple's destruction. Rabbinic Judaism adopted a more cautious, non-revolutionary stance. A couple of centuries passed before the next major war, the Jewish revolt against Constantius Gallus, which took place in 351 to 352 CE in the Roman province of Syria Palestina, during a period of imperial instability and rising Christian dominance. The Roman Empire was embroiled in a civil war between Emperor Constantius II and the usurper Magnentius. Constantius appointed his cousin Gallus as Caesar of the East, who arrived in Antioch in 351 CE. Jews, facing religious persecution, rising taxes, and Christian hostility, saw an opportunity to resist Roman rule. The revolt began with a night attack on Roman garrisons, allowing rebels to seize weapons. Jewish forces reportedly targeted Greek pagans and Samaritans, intensifying ethnic tensions. Roman general Ursicinus was sent to crush the rebellion. Thousands of Jews were killed, including non-combatants and children. A permanent Roman garrison was stationed in Galilee. This revolt marked a final large-scale Jewish uprising in Roman Palestine until the 7th century. Now for our final war, the Jewish revolt against Heraclius. In the 7th century, Jews were facing systematic persecution under Byzantine rule, including bans from Jerusalem and destruction of synagogues. When the Sasanian Persians invaded Byzantine territory, many Jews allied with them, hoping to reclaim religious and political freedom. Leaders like Nehemiah ben Hushiel and Benjamin of Tiberias mobilized Jewish fighters, and together with Persian forces, captured Jerusalem without resistance. Nehemiah was made governor, and plans began to rebuild the temple and restore the high priesthood. The victory was seen by some Jews as messianic, reviving hopes of national restoration. The local Christians revolted, killing Nehemiah and other Jewish leaders. The Persians retook the city after a short siege and the true cross was seized and taken to Persia. But by 617 CE, the Persians reversed their policy, siding with Christians and expelling Jews from Jerusalem. Jewish hopes for a restored homeland were dashed, and heavy taxes were imposed. When Heraclius reconquered the region in 628 to 630 CE, Jews were massacred or exiled, especially in Galilee and Jerusalem. The revolt marked the final Jewish attempt at sovereignty in the region until the 20th century, deepened Jewish-Christian tensions, and shaped Byzantine policies toward Jews for centuries. We've now covered the entire period of time when the Romans had a presence in what is now Israel. And what do we find? Clearly, the Romans and Jews did not get along. These wars, which spanned the entire period of Roman occupation, and even some time before it, reveal 2 key things. Firstly, that the Jews would absolutely not accept any foreign religions or customs. And secondly, that they were fiercely opposed to paying taxes or making any material contribution to a foreign empire to which they were subjected. Now, picture yourself in the position of a Roman senator or military general. You have a region of your empire that's not paying its way. Moreover, you're having to spend huge amounts of resources to keep it within your empire. It's like an investment that doesn't return anything, but you need to be continually paying out monies to maintain it. In conclusion, are the frustrations of the Roman government and Senate over Israel motive enough for them to create a pacifistic Messiah and try covertly to impose it on the Jewish people? Such a Messiah would have to stifle nationalistic fervor, make the Jews compliant and docile to Roman rule, pay taxes and tributes to them, and be more accepting of alien religions and customs. The next video in this series will answer that question.